It's almost hilarious. Well, not really, because there's a lot of people that are negatively affected from all this central planning bullshit, right? But this is in regard to the fact that the Ontario government and these central planning fucking elites, these dumb dipshits that really, they're so inept. If you actually knew how inept they were, if you could sit down and question them one-on-one, you'd be like, you're in charge of the entire fucking province of Ontario, not just for their social, but their economic prosperity? Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Yeah, we're in big trouble. Exhibit A. Ontario minimum wage hike could trigger 50,000 job losses. Watchdog. This is a Globe and Mail article, but all the media outlets are reporting on it today. More than 50,000 people could lose their jobs if the Ontario government goes ahead with its plan to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2019. The province's financial watchdog said Tuesday in a report that assessed the economic impact of the proposed increase. So, I mean, let me just point out first and foremost that, you know, because of this central planning model and the amount of inflation that is a direct result of the central planning model, whether it's from the central planning governments and all this deficit spending and debts, or having a central bank that gets to devalue the currency by printing it, right? Printing it out of thin air, and this fractional reserve banking system that we currently live under, you know, I would agree that people should make a livable wage. The problem is, if you keep turning to central planners and governments or these crony corporatists, you're never going to see a net benefit. And the evidence is out there. Wages have been stagnant now from the 70s all the way up till now. So 40 plus years later, the wages in direct correlation to the prices of all the products and services that you see, you know, in aggregate, right? Not just one particular portion of the economy, right? So some things are cheaper, like electronics, we see are cheaper. But your staples, your food, your clothing, the roof over your head, they have all become much, much, much more expensive, because that's all in direct correlation to your domestic currency, the purchasing power of your domestic currency. The electronics is cheaper because that currency, your domestic currency, you know, the trade value is much higher than it would be for the Chinese yuan. That's the only way you benefit, is because people in other countries have a much lower value in their currency of what we have in our domestic population, in the Canadian dollar. But it doesn't change the fact that the purchasing power of Canadians and our dollar has basically stagnated. All this increased prosperity, all this increased innovation and automation, robots, all this stuff hasn't given any real benefit to the average consumer, to the average Canadian person, right? The average Canadian today working, whether you're making $15 an hour, or like when I was in the mid 80s when I was making $5 an hour, actually in the mid 80s when I was making $5 an hour, my purchasing power, even at that rate, was much higher than it is now in 2017, even if I was making $20 an hour. Let that sink in for a minute. I'd go back to making $5 an hour if the prices of everything that I consumed was the same price it was back when I was making $5 an hour. When I was making $5 an hour, rent for a typical place was about $350, right? Gas was 30 some cents a liter. So like I say, once you adjust for inflation because of all this central planning and these central banks, your purchasing power is actually stagnated, and for some people in society have actually not just stagnated but decreased. And we're seeing that gap getting wider and wider and wider, where your purchasing power is being decreased, even if it's only by a small amount, right? Or even if it's just in particular sectors of the economy. So like I said, when it comes to electronics, where they've offshored some of these businesses and these corporations to be able to have a much reduced rate of pay for their labor force, so it's in China or Mexico, you know, you might see some of that cause and effect benefit, but you would see actually a lot more if it wasn't for the fact that there's tariffs, right? There's taxation, there's a million different ways that governments find a way to take some of that prosperity and take a large chunk of it for themselves. But anyways, in addition to the fact that 50,000 people could potentially lose their jobs, because yeah, a lot of these, especially for the small to medium businesses, it's not that your employer wouldn't love to pay you more. Trust me, there's a lot of employers. I've worked for some small businesses, right? Small to medium-sized businesses in my life. And it's not that they wouldn't want to offer you more. It's just that, like I say, their expenditures is more and more because of central planning, bureaucracy, and big government. So they still want to maintain their particular portion of the pie as well. So they have a lot smaller pie to be able to divvy up to their, like I say, their employees, their investors, their stockholders, right? All the people that are actively involved in creating that company or continuing that company's prosperity. Everyone's getting a smaller and smaller piece of the pie because the bureaucrats, the central planning types, are taking a larger and larger portion of it. But in addition to the fact that 50,000 people in Ontario have the potential of losing their jobs, let me read from this next paragraph, and it'll be something even more disturbing that you'll hear. The job losses would be concentrated among teens and young adults. And think about it, these are the people that are going to have to pay off all these student loans, right? While the number of minimum wage workers in Ontario would increase from over 500,000 to 1.6 million in 2019. So basically, not only are you talking about a loss of 50,000 jobs, but you're also talking about a dramatic increase in part-time jobs in contrast to full-time jobs. So to go from 500,000 part-time jobs, which is still a substantial amount, which is, it's fine for, like I say, for people, well, not people in post-secondary education, but, some high school students, that's okay. But to expand up from 500,000 to 1.6 million, right? So that's well in excess of 100+% increase of the kind of people that'll be working in precarious positions, right? Think about what that's going to do to the greater economy, the real economy, not this fucking false statistical bullshit these central planners put forth and pretend that it's the economy, like the stock market or GDP, right? Because GDP, if you have to work 3 jobs, you might very well make $10 more than if you had 1 job. And they'll say, hey, look, that's increase on GDP. But what has it done for you as a person that now has to work 3 fucking jobs to make what you could do in just 1 prior? When you're talking about statistical numbers from central planners' perspective, it's like I say, it's just numbers. You're just ones and zeros and whatever number in between. For you as a person, yeah, it plays a huge dramatic effect on not just your personal and social, but your economic life and your family life and your prosperity going forward. And your long-term goals and aspirations you may very well have. They don't take any of that stuff into account. They just talk about things in aggregate, right? Big numbers, statistics, data. They don't really give a shit about you. The market does, though. The market does. Or even if you don't think the market does, the market cares about doing things in a proper sense that will benefit you tremendously in comparison to these central planning hacks, these authoritarian control freaks and sociopaths that just want to constantly dictate, control, and dominate the economy to benefit themselves and their crony corporatist counterparts. So I'll post a link to this article in the description of the video below so you can continue on and read it. But like I say, this is just more proof. It's just, the evidence I've got so far, if I had it in real life, if it was actually tangible, it'd be stacked to the ceiling. Matter of fact, I'd probably have to have multiple stacks behind me. What more do you need, Canada? Central planning, this model of central planning, the polar opposite to free market is constantly showing and flashing the warning signs constantly that it's a failure, especially if you care about proper economics, proper incentive, and true equality of opportunity. Not equality of outcome, but equality of opportunity. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.